goodwill beginner. All my good works are needles in hay, and I try to do right based on my own sight, just like a blind man who's standing in the way. And all that I've taken, it was sadly mistaken to bleed for my own, for my sake. Now everything I have was stolen or borrowed. All that I've taken is much more than I can take. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand, and I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. That's where I stand. Lord, you bore my refuse. You are my refuge. You gave up everything when you threw it all away. You gave me life new. You carried my weight through the evening to the morning and to the day. I was a fool in the quickness of the sand. I was a leper trying to save my own skin. But now I'm a man who knows where I stand on the rock of ages. Jesus, that's where I stand. On the rock of ages. Jesus, that's where I stand.
Good evening. Welcome to Calvary Chapel Greenville, Texas on a wonderful Wednesday night. Oscar, I need to do some jumping jacks. I need to get you live here. Come on. All right. So that's where excitement rolls right there. Oh, it's that one again. All right. So Tuesday evenings at 5:30 p.m. That will be the women's ministry. So ladies, show up to that one if you want to. If you don't want to, then obviously don't. Frank, you're not invited for that one. Just throwing that out there. Are you good with that? Okay, he's good with that. So Tuesdays at 5:30, we got that going on. Hey, upcoming news, we are moving. And so we still haven't nailed down every detail of it, but everybody who knows about where we're moving, about what's going on, and the details that go with that. Oh, there's a couple things I needed to bring up, but I'll talk about that later. Let's see here. First Wednesday of each month, we're going to special message. The next one coming up is the 40 days or the 41st day. And after that, it was asked to do covenantal theology versus dispensationalism. That one. So that'll be coming up in the next first Wednesday. Otherwise, on Tuesday or Wednesday nights, we're in 2 Chronicles. Friday morning, men's prayer. We got that going on for us. Are your slides moving on your side? Okay, once you click over to Wednesday or whatever the normal one that works. Okay, and that's a really bad sign then. Do we need to reset that real quick? Like it didn't go through the order or something. Oh. All right. See here, Friday morning men's prayer. That's 6 a.m. in the morning. Get a hold of me. Get part of the text message thread. Unless you're Frank, then apparently I can't figure out how to add you into the group, and I'm sorry about that. I know it starts with an F. You'd think that'd be the easiest part of it. I can find you, just can't add you for some crazy reason. Calvary Chapel Greenville First Communion, or the communion happens on the first Sunday of the month, so you know that now. And then Romans on Sunday mornings. You may have noticed we didn't talk about the fellowship meal coming up in November, but right now we're kind of putting that on hold with all the fun, moving stuff that's going on. So that you know that. I don't want you to be misled or misthinking and going like, wait a second. Patricia, I can see you just going mad, sad. You're overcome with emotions. You start crying. It's like gets bad. We don't want that. So just know. If you want to do lunch on that Sunday, maybe we'll swarm some restaurant or something, right? All righty. Tonight we're in 2 Chronicles chapter 9. You probably knew that or could guess that. We are looking at two things. It's the wealth of the king and the wisdom of the king. And then we're going to be introduced to a new person tonight. Well, it's maybe not new to you, but new to the book that we're looking through. And so we're going to meet very vaguely the Queen of Sheba. So it doesn't give us a lot of detail. You can find more detail in Egyptian what have yous, but the problem is that it's suspected she came from Yemen, so it's like, okay, whatever. You can't have everything, right? Just how it always works out. So anyways, that's where we are tonight, and we're going to go through, it is kind of a split chapter. Well, I say it's three pieces of the chapter because we first look at the Queen of Sheba, the interaction that happens there, and then we turn and we look at the wealth of King Solomon, and then the death of King Solomon. I don't want to spoil it, but in this chapter, he's going to be a donor. So it happens. I know you guys are upset. You're like holding on to that story, but it just has to happen this way. Let's pray and get started. Lord, we thank you this evening. We're thankful that you love us, that you got us here. We ask, Lord, that you would teach us through your Holy Spirit. Help us to see more clearly this whole thing of the Sheba and King Solomon, and Lord, where we might see where he's gone right and where he's gone wrong, and Lord, that we may learn from that. Strengthen us as we go through this, Lord. Help us to be your people. We thank you, love, and praise you, and ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, we're looking at looking at the end of King Solomon's portion of 2 Chronicles. We'll move on. As of next time, we'll be looking at Rehoboam. But for tonight, we're looking at King Solomon. And what are the things that we remember about King Solomon? The man was wise, and not kind of wise. He was like from the hand of God wise. He knew more stuff. He understood stuff. He could go in detail and figure that out. Well, the cool thing about when you actually take that place in life is at some point you build a reputation, right? Have you ever built a reputation on anything? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, right? But if you've ever built a reputation on things, you can understand what becomes the fame, the mystique, the draw, and all that stuff of Solomon. Once we see that, we're like, okay, then he's really, really coming up and everything's a big deal. We don't think about the impact that we have for God. And let me say this, and I'm not trying to be weird or nothing, but sometimes, and this is not King Solomon's case, and I pray that it's your case, but there are times when we have this great impact for God, and when we have that big and amazing impact for God, we become kind of famous. We're not ever going to be famous. We're not, of that illusion or whatever. But as we try to push the gospel forward, as we try to, show people all these things, there will come some notoriety. People say, oh, well, you're the guy who knows, or you're the lady that knows, and then here we go. King Solomon had that. Everybody who ran across the man understood the wisdom. And you have to understand it was a supernatural wisdom that he was infilled with. And of course, he modified it to his own ways, unfortunately. But, he had wisdom given by God. And so there was no question. The things that he said were just on spot. And if you ever talk to that person who can just read the situation, they see what's going on, they know what's going on, they can communicate the whole thing super easy. And you're like, how did they get there? Where did that come from? And they're just in tune. And that's who King Solomon is. Again, that's the wisdom that comes from that. Now, hearing of this, the Queen of Sheba is, just impressed just by hearing about it, just by simply having heard the stories. And so she wants to come see it for herself. You can't blame her. This is going to be kind of a cool thing. But now here's the fun part about this. And we need to think about this because when we dig into this tonight, there's some parts that are really good and some parts that are really not good. And some parts that maybe give us a heart check as we do things. She has the ability to go meet this king because she herself is royalty, right? People travel in circles. We know that. I don't happen to travel in like the Elon Musk type circles. Those are the gazillionaires or whatever they are. I travel in the Poe Man circles, right? It's what we got. That's just who we are. And then that's the unfortunate side of life. Well, it's not really unfortunate. I think I like my group just fine. There's no pretension. There's all that. It's just like, be who you are. Let's love Jesus, and here we go. But in order to connect, in order to be involved in all that, in order for the Queen of Sheba to go meet with him, she couldn't have just been a peasant from wherever she was from. No, that wouldn't work at all. So she would have to have some, why would you go see the king? Well, because you're also royalty. And so there's that. So let's get into the passage. We're only going to read the first 4 verses, and we're going to move right into it. You ready? It says, now, when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions, having a very great retinue and camels bearing spices and very much gold and precious stones. And when she came to Solomon, she told him all that was on her mind. And Solomon answered all her questions. There was nothing hidden from Solomon that he could not explain to her. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen the wisdom of Solomon, the house that he had built, the food of his table, the seating of his officials, and the attendance of his servants, and their clothing, his cupbearers, and their clothing, and his burnt offerings that he offered to the house of the Lord, there was no more breath in her. So as we begin to see Queen of Sheba, she comes in super impressed. A couple things we need to remember about her. She comes from somewhere else. Now, as we come out of the genealogy in Genesis, and I was going to take you to Genesis 10 real quick. We're going to look at a couple of verses and keep on. We're talking about this is after the flood, with the time of Noah and all this stuff. So Genesis chapter 10, verse 7, and then we're going to jump to verse 28 after that. It says in verse 7, the sons of Cush, Seba, Havilah, Sabta, man, these people, Ramah, and Sebedekah, the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan, Obal, Abimael, and Sheba. And then, so that's the verse 28 where we jump down to the Sheba one. When you go down a little bit further in Genesis 25, verse 3, you see Joktan, father of Sheba, and Dedan. Fathers of Dedan were Asherim. Those parts don't matter. But what we see here is this is actually somebody who comes from, obviously from the line of Noah. It's not an unknown. This is not just some weird thing. You go further through, and I didn't bring all, because there's so many references throughout the Bible, but you'll find out that some people go where Sheba is. So it's not like it's a completely closed off thing. According to one of the guesstimates that I read, it was like 1,500 miles from where she was to where to Jerusalem. And so it's like, well, is that, I don't know, is it really that far? Because you look at where Yemen is versus that, I don't know. I've never driven that one. So I think you'd have to helicopter that one. If it's that kind of distance, you might want to get in a car or an airplane or something crazy. But so she would have to have traveled a good distance. Now, again, she comes from somewhere, and so there's two suspicions. It's either Egypt or it's Yemen. Most people are pulling on Yemen and saying that's where it really was. But the Egyptians would say, no, that's ours. And so I don't care about the argument. It doesn't matter for the teaching. It has no bearing on anything else of that. But what we do know about her is she came because she'd heard this stuff. Now, the approach that she had was to come and just lay everything out to Solomon. Sometimes people will come to you and they have stuff going on and you know it, right? It's like, okay, I can see something's going on. And it's like, well, I got questions. And have you ever had the question person? And I get those, and some of my favorite times breathing have been dealing with the question people, because some of those questions make you think. And some of those questions really kind of put you into perspective, and you're thinking, man, this is one of the cooler situations we've had. We talked the other day about the LDS girls that came to talk to me while I was in the parking lot, and they had questions. Of course, they were trying to coerce me to become a Mormon, but or at least to attend their church. But their questions were amazing, and it's like, man, it's such a great thing to answer these. Let me say this. When I answered the questions that they had, I'm answering it with God's wisdom, not mine. When Solomon is answering the questions of the queen, he's answering with God's wisdom. And we know that because God gave it to him. Supernaturally, he had the wisdom. Now, he could discern and he could see things, but oftentimes, even though we can see and we can discern what it is, we have a hard time looking inward. Like I can see your sin. Why can I see your sin, but I can't see mine? It's the same thing. It's just how it seems to be sometimes, right? So it's like, well, I can't look back at me the same way I can look at other people. However, when I look at other people, maybe I'm seeing some of my stuff in them. I'm just not really ready to recognize or say that. And then, of course, I'm more able because I've experienced some of it myself. Who knows how it worked out exactly. We're not given the details. There's some speculation that we can throw out there. But what we do know is when the queen came to King Solomon and she had all these questions, he was just able to answer. And she was like, he was impressive. Everything that he had done was beyond impressive. You see all the people that are there. You see how they function, the organization of it all. It's just structured top to bottom. And he's got this thing like a well-oiled machine, and all these things are happening, and this is what's going on. And you have to be impressed when you see that. Have you ever been somewhere where like everything is so organized, it's a little bit creepy, and it's a huge operation, and things are just moving like this? It's the warehouses and stuff. Like and I've never been there. I only saw it, like a news report on it, but it's like the Amazon warehouse where they have things that go zip, 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 and pick it, and it's like their shelves ain't organized the way you and I would do it. The computer remembers where it set that, and it remembers where to go pick it back up. And it could be sitting next to things that have nothing to do with it, but it's organized in such a way that it's the most efficient way they could do it. And so you might have 14 places in the warehouse that have the same thing. They're just in 14 different places. But, it's like the little robots or whatever, go and get them. But they have it organized. And you walk and you see just all the pieces and parts moving like a well-oiled machine. And you think, man, that's amazing. We're impressed by order. We're impressed by structure. We're impressed by all of those things. And that's why as we look around at creation, we can see that God had put everything in order. And it's impressive. Let's just be honest. It's impressive. How is it that, these animals do well, and, it's like the harmony of God's creation just basically testifies to the genius of God. Now, with Solomon having that wisdom, and we're happy that he did, but him having that wisdom, you could see how that might happen in the same way. And so as she's talking to him, it's just, all these things begin to make sense. She had all these questions, it was probably more complicated than how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll? Or Tootsie Pop. Which one is it? Tootsie Pop, right? Anyways, how many licks? And then, of course, the owl can never figure it out because it crunches halfway through or whatever. But, Solomon had the answer. He knew what was going on. When it's all said and done, it's like, man, she is just absolutely amazed. And then in verse 5, you see it says this, and she said to the king, the report was true that I heard in my own land of your words and of your wisdom. But I did not believe the reports until I came, and my own eyes had seen it, and behold, half the greatness of your wisdom was not told to me. You surpassed the report that I heard. Happy are you, men. Happy are these, your servants, who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on his throne as king for the Lord your God. Because your God loved Israel and would establish them forever, he made you king over them that you may execute justice and righteousness. Well, it sounds like she's really impressed. Now, here's the part we want to be careful with. Blessed be the Lord your God. You see where she takes claim of his God? Nope. Today, people are more apt to go towards atheism. And back in those days, they were more apt to go towards, this is the God for you, this is the God for me, and the God for them, and blah, 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 whatever. And it was just a ton of different gods that, well, that's your God. Where's the statue? Let's go see him. But that's kind of the mindset that they were in. I had a friend of mine, and he knew me pre-Jesus. Actually, he knew me in the army, so that was not my Jesus-serving time in life. And I remember when he was talking to me, because I said, oh yeah, so here's what's going on. It's all this that happened, all that. And he goes, man, I'm really happy for you. That sounds like that church thing's working out for you. Hold on a second. What? People can recognize the difference in your life. People can recognize God in your life, and they never attribute it to God. Don't you find that fascinating? It's like, man, look, you're really doing well. You're speaking well. You right attitude, all this stuff. Everything seems to be going pretty smooth, and yet, they don't give they don't attribute that to God. Well, you've got a good moral compass. You don't care about your moral compass. Well, you got all the things are going right for you. Like you must really be doing the right thing. I'm always humored, and I tell you this so many times. Obviously, the queen's not a convert. Well, let's make that clear right now. She's not a convert. She's very impressed by King Solomon. And she's probably more interested in his God based on what she's seeing, but really she's not a convert. But I've had many times where somebody would come and say, hey, could you pray for me? No problems. The ones that get me, the ones that really, really plow me down, are the ones who claim to be atheists. They say, I don't have anything or want anything to do with God, and they ramble and it's like, everything, and you're stupid for what you think, the wool's being pulled over your eyes, all the stuff. I'm sure you've heard it all before. I know I have. And yet, when push comes to shove, bad situation happens, what do they say? Could you pray for me? Really? Can I pray for you? Okay, well. And you're like, well, man, maybe I've been praying for you, and maybe you're starting to wake up. I don't know. But people, they seem like, well, kind of like in the story with Jonah. It's like, well, go to your king, go to your God, see what happens there. It's kind of a crapshoot, just kind of throwing the spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. But that's not the situation with our God. Our God is creator. Our God is the one who set everything into motion. And so it's not like we're looking at, well, there's the God of these people, the God of these people, and the God of these people. There's but one God. Jesus is very, very distinct in when he said, no one comes to the Father but by me. So there's an exclusivity to Christianity. What about those people who are, like we just described moments ago, as being the atheists, and things have gone horrible, things have gone bad, and what do they say? We need to pray. What's my question when they say that? Who are you praying to? I think it's a valid question. Just like, well, what do you believe? Because it doesn't seem like you believe this. So even though King Solomon is really showing his godly chops, so to speak, and as impressive as I'm sure it can be, she's not going to convert. Doesn't look like. Just don't see that. And she's happy for his God. And she keeps saying, your God, your God, your God. So she's not buying into this whole creator God bit. And that's fine. She doesn't have to. But it just seems like kind of an unfortunate setup. Going to verse 9 now, it says, Then she gave the king 120 talents of gold and a very great quantity of spices and precious stones. There were no spices such as those that the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Moreover, the servants of Hiram and the servants of Solomon, who brought gold from Ophir, brought algum wood and precious stones. And the king made from the algum wood supports for the house of the Lord, for the king's house, lyres also and harps for the singers. There never was seen like them, or like of them before in the land of Judah. And King Solomon gave to the queen Sheba all that she desired, whatever she asked, besides what she had brought to the king. So she turned and went back to her own land with her servants. And again, we see her, it's obviously she's not some pauper. She's not just some random person. She's a queen. And even though she's a queen, everything you think, okay, well, that's going the way it ought to go. Well, even through that, they have a gift-giving thing. Let me give you this. Let me give you that. So what do you give the guy who's got everything? You just give stuff and you just hope that it works. Something, and let me say this. He gave her so much more in the wisdom that he gave. He gave enough wisdom that it blew her out of the water. Now, I wanted to touch on this, and I probably put this verse in the wrong place, and that's okay. You can blame me later. The symbol or the type of that we see at this time, she's come to seek and figure out wisdom. There's people who came to Jesus. The rich young ruler says, what must I do to be saved? And then, of course, he's like, gives him just sell everything you got, give it to the poor, there you go. And he wouldn't do it. Sometimes people can come to you and like, man, you have God's wisdom just flowing out everywhere. And you give them God's wisdom and they don't hear it. Just don't hear it. Not that they don't like you, not that they just don't hear it. They're not going to hear it. But she's drawn to it. How many times have maybe you've been talking, and again, going back to the character, back to, you've got a reputation for being this godly person, and people come and say, hey, godly person, let me ask you some godly questions, and they start, really going through this. There's a reason that they do that, because they see the wisdom of God the same way that she sees the wisdom of God in Solomon. The example given, and Jesus makes the example, and that's why I feel very solid telling you this. In Matthew chapter 12, I'll let you turn there if you want, but Matthew chapter 12 is where we'll look at that. And what happens is that Jesus is being questioned, as he might be oftentimes. People trying to kind of nail him down on stuff. The people asking Jesus questions were not genuine. We'll find that out in the passage. So Matthew 12, verse 38, it says this. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees, that gives it away, right, answered him saying, Teacher, we wish to see a sign from you. But he answered them, an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign. But no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up at judgment with this generation and condemn it. For they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and behold, something greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up at the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the ends of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and behold, something greater than Solomon is here. Now hold on a second. You like the switcheroo? I thought that was a fun one. Hold on a second here. She's going to do what? Years ago, and I think this is important to understand. Years ago, this guy comes up to me. I'm working in a parts store in Ramstein, Germany. Little parts counter, little window and all that stuff. And he comes up and he starts telling me about this Jesus stuff. I cuss him out. I'm a Christian, and I told him how to do things and where to get and all that stuff. I don't need this stuff. I'm American after all, Of course I'm a Christian. I think about that man from time to time. His name is Richard Kais. If you ever find this, he happens to be around the Tacoma area, I believe. I could be wrong on that. This has been a long time ago now, and he was pretty old at that point in time. The part that really impressed me with that is that man came, he didn't give up, he just sat there and talked with me for a little bit, patient, loving, kind, and all that stuff. And I was like, I don't care. I just don't care. I'd been burned by church. I'd been burned by churches. I'd been burned by people who were supposed to be, preachers of the gospel. And I didn't want anything to do with it because church was stupid and it was horrible and who liked this junk? That was my attitude, right? And so here's this guy trying his best to try to get through to me. He walks away. He had to have been a little bit defeated. That's what my intent was, at least. Imagine if he knew. Isn't that crazy to think? Imagine if you knew. Have you ever talked to somebody pertaining to the gospel, talking to somebody about Jesus, and you just don't even know, you think, man, this person is really hardened to it. Wouldn't it be interesting to find out that years later, they not only did they come to Jesus, but one of those pieces that just kept sticking in their brain was that conversation that they had with you, that you walked away from going, man, that's something else. I've seen it many times with many people. There was Kirk Cameron, he's an actor guy, you guys may have heard of him. Anyways, he'd been working with Ray Comfort, and they were out talking to these people, and there was this, Mr. Thug dude, and they're back and forth talking with him, and this guy's he's so resistant, he's pushing against him, and man, he doesn't want nothing to do with them. And a few years later, they see the same exact guy, and this time he's holding a Bible. It's like you can't imagine the possible impact that you can have on someone, and you just never knew. You just didn't know what was going to happen. I thank God for all the small meetings in my life. I thank God for all the big meetings in my life. And I pray that they come out to be something better. There was a young lady I talked to, it's been years back now, and she was not serving God. She was in a same-sex relationship. And I'm talking to her, and I know her sexual preference. It's like, you don't have to be, super genius to see it. I'm just like, man, if I can get through to this woman, she will be solid. You ever talk to that person? You just know, man, if they get in motion, man, watch out. And so I talked to her, and she's like, well, I can't hear this stuff. Well, why can't you hear this stuff? And she goes, well, I'm a lesbian. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. Before Jesus got a hold of me, I was a mess. I was a complete sinner. I was horrible. So I don't care where somebody's coming from. I want to see where they're going to. And I'm so excited about the fact that somebody might actually listen to me. I have impact, and here's what's weird about this, and I don't tell these stories as much, but I've had people come back to me later, years later, and say, hey, but guess what? You said this thing. Interesting. Now, I'm going to have some more of that, standing behind the pulpit and proclaiming God's word. I'm sure I'm going to hear more of that time and again. But the people that I talk to outside of that who say, you know what? You didn't give up on me. I know you're praying for me. I know whatever it is. But they know that something was going on. They know that something happened. And so we, don't ever think that what you did wasn't enough. So I think it's fantastic, the two examples that Jesus gives against the Pharisees, the scribes and the Pharisees, the two examples that he gives are two of them that on paper should have failed. On paper, they're no good. Obviously, we know the conclusion of Jonah, but we don't find out the conclusion for the Queen of Sheba until we come to Jesus. Now, do you think he knows what's going on? Of course he does. He's God. He's the creator. He's the one that has all this, he knows. And so I think it's interesting that those are the examples given. And who was it that wouldn't hear? It was the religious people. It was the religious people. And what you're going to find, and I see this in churches, I see this in some pastors, and they have this arrogance, this I am holy and wonderful, that kind of stuff. They look down on people. Have you ever been looked down on from a church? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Should we call that bullying? I'm going to ask that question. That just came to my head right now. My wife and I were at a church many years ago, and you dressed up. And if you didn't dress up, I went and didn't have any idea. I was like, I had nothing. I'm just like barely figuring this Jesus thing out right now. We show up. I'm the only idiot not wearing a suit and tie. And it's nervous, man. And these people look shiny, smell like starch and everything else. It's like, whoa, man, I got to watch out. We didn't stay there but for maybe like a couple of weeks, and then out we go. And, of course, we sent our son to their school, which became an even crazier thing. But they looked down on him for the, probably because his parents are idiots, I guess. I don't know. He was a problem child, though. Well, let's be honest. Sticking rocks in ears and things like that. They were kind of judgmental. I remember walking up, and I was talking in Walmart to one of the ladies from the church. And I'm not getting, personally, this word from God that everybody else is getting, right? And they're judging me, man. She says, God has told me that in order to be properly obedient, I must wear the dress. The lady didn't own pants, man. Like, is it a sin to own pants for a woman? No, it's not a sin. But for her it was. And for those ladies who didn't, they just kind of looked real judgy like. If they walked in here today and saw me wearing jeans, fishing shirt, and non-dressy, I count them dressy, but I've never been a dress-up person. Never have been. It's not who I am. And imagine that legalism mindset that set in when it was like, well, you have to look like us. You need to have the pointy shoes. Oscar, do you have pointy shoes that are shiny? Of course you do. I can see you being Mr. Dress Up. Not so much you, Frank. I think, Frank, you and me are probably more alike on that one, right? There we go. There you go. A lot of people are like me. That's okay. That's good. I like that. But we can't judge those people who are not like us. That young lady and I hope she's serving God today, I don't know. If she walked in this church and she sat down next to her girlfriend or whatever they have, man, let's just tell them about Jesus. We forget about that stuff. Because you never know how it's going to work out. You never know where it's going to resonate and where it's going to come back to. And the people are just going to be like, man, it was because you loved me, because you treated me like Jesus, that there was a difference in that. So that's just one of those things. Solomon obviously treated her well, and he answered all the questions. And because of that, she really admired his wisdom. And apparently she turned to his God at some point. You don't see that in the passage, but you find that out later from Jesus. before we go to the next section, we're really done talking about Sheba now, the Queen of Sheba. I wanted to really kind of make that an obvious thing, but I also wanted to get through this chapter. So we're going to look at two other things, and one of them is the wealth of King Solomon. And before we get to the wealth of King Solomon, I want to prepare you for what King Solomon should have been, how he should have been doing, and all the pieces and parts that go with that. Deuteronomy chapter 17. These are the qualifications for a king. Deuteronomy 17, starting at verse 14, it says this: when you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me like all the nations around me. You may indeed set a king over you, whom the Lord your God will choose, one from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. Since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return again that way. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. And when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this law, approved by the Levitical priest, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it in all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. So that's the preface or the setup of what a king should be. Let's read about King Solomon. We're going to do a little bit of measuring stick, shall we? Going back to our passage in 2 Chronicles 9, looking at verse 13, it says, now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was, you gotta love this one, 666 talents of gold. Besides that which the explorers and merchants brought, and all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the land brought gold and silver to Solomon. King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold, 600 shekels of beaten gold went into each shield. And he made 300 shields of beaten gold, 300 shekels of gold went into each shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne and overlaid it with pure gold. The throne had 6 steps and a footstool of gold, which were attached to the throne. And on each side of the seat were armrests, and 2 lions standing beside the armrest, while 12 lions stood there on one on each end of the step, on the 6 steps. Nothing like it was ever made for any kingdom. All King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. Silver was not considered as anything in these days of Solomon. For the king's ships went to Tarshish with servants of Hiram once every 3 years. The ships of Tarshish used to come bringing gold. All right, just jumped on me. There we go. Tarshish, once every 3 years, used to come bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, and peacocks. Thus King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom, and all the kings of the earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put into his mind. Every one of them brought his present articles of silver and of gold, garments, myrrh, spices, horses, and mules, so much year by year. And Solomon had 4,000 stalls for horses and chariots, and 12,000 horsemen, whom he stationed in the chariot cities and with the king in Jerusalem. And he ruled over all the kings from the Euphrates to the land of the Philistines and to the border of Egypt. And the king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stone. And he made cedar as plentiful as sycamore of Shephelah. And horses were imported for Solomon from Egypt and from all lands. So let me ask you a question. Did Solomon live by the Bible? Not even close. Not even remotely close. He was supposed to be someone that they could all just talk with, and he's just part of it, right? Remember the passage we read out of Deuteronomy said that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers. And I think that's pretty obvious that he didn't have a bunch of horses, that he didn't have a bunch of wives, that he didn't have excess silver and gold. Those were the things that God said, these are the criteria when you are king. And what did Solomon do? In all his great wisdom, what did he do? He still yielded to the things of this world. And man, that's a tough one. We say that we're not subject to things of sort. I mean, like, for me, it's easy. Like, silver and gold escape me completely, right? But we say, well, we're not consumed by that. But are we? Maybe. Like, is it something that you've gotten yourself into? Possibly. I'm not going to rule anything out. We don't know. And so you're in this place, man. Like, for some reason, he decided to stack all the stuff up, keep all the things that he could possibly keep, grab all the things he could get. And you look at that and you think the wisdom that drew the Queen of Sheba in, that godly wisdom that he knew so much, that he was so well versed, and then you see all these kings coming and basically being obeisant, paying homage, bringing stuff, bringing gifts, because they were so impressed by Solomon. And we don't see this, so I can't tell you what happened like this. Wouldn't it have been impressive? Wouldn't it have been severely impressive if King Solomon was constantly saying, this is my creator, this is the God that I follow. And it doesn't seem like Solomon was doing that. It just doesn't seem like it was there. Now, was it? I don't know. But it sure doesn't seem that way. There's going to be time of prosperity in our lives. It might be small time. There's times of prosperity in my life. They just don't seem to last very long, and they're not very big, but there's times of prosperity. Years ago, when I was still in high school, we had this guy. Sorry, hold on. I don't know why my voice is going the way it is. We had this young, see how much better when you throw some water on it? Man, it makes it good. Anyways, there's a young man in high school with me, and he was poor. I mean, he wasn't kind of poor. I've never seen poor like this guy. And I've met a lot of people in my life. This guy was impressively poor. It was to the point you'd be sitting at the table at lunch, and he'd be like, you going to finish that? You can have it, man. And so you'd always slide your plate down to Casey because he was going to eat it. And somebody's like, man, is that good? And he goes, no, it tastes horrible. But he's shoveling it in because when he gets done at school, there is no food at home. We knew that. And people try to be nice to him and all that stuff. And there was some tension that was at the house. And, of course, that all faded away over time. But at that time, one of the teachers took him in and said, look, I'm going to take care of you. She sees the state that he was in. His mom wasn't like, she's a little different. But it wasn't that she was like just trying to be horrible or mean or whatever like that. They just didn't have. I mean, they just simply did not have. I've never seen like cardboard on their walls kind of poor. I mean, I've seen it since then, but not like that at that level. She takes him in. She starts doing nice things for him. And then he has this arrogant attitude because he's got stuff. And I'm like, how did this happen? Right? Hey, money changes people. People win the lottery, they turn crazy, right? And so, I think I forget what the numbers were. The statistics are crazy, though, because they look at it and it's like, for the people who win the lottery, it's like 70 or 80% of them end up more poor than they were before winning it because they just get money, have no idea what to do with it. And they just start, losing their mind. I think even if we have the wisdom of God, even if we're about as solid as it comes and we understand those things, I think there's still a temptation of that we need to be very aware of. It was necessary for Solomon to be aware, and of course he wasn't, or maybe he just looked past it. But I think 700 wives excels past the one wife, just by 699. And then the whole 300 concubines thing. And whatever, you're doing it for political motivation, but weren't you supposed to be there with your brethren? Weren't you supposed to be on the same level? So, man, this guy really, it's weird to think about. We've got to be careful on that. Well, let's read his epilogue. Let's see what he's got here in verse 29. It says, "Now the rest of the acts of Solomon, from first to last, are they not written in the history of Nathan the prophet, and in the prophecy of Ahijah the Shilonite, and in the visions of Iddo the seer concerning Jeroboam the son of Nebat? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. And Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of David his father, and Rehoboam his son reigned in his place." And so again, next week, we will begin seeing the reign of Rehoboam. But that's kind of a weird punctuation to Solomon. We got the Proverbs, we got Song of Solomon, we got Ecclesiastes, right? So it's not like he was without giving information. But I don't want it to be said of me, and it could be, I don't know. My life's not finished yet. But I don't want it to be said of me that he served God so well and then something went wrong. He turned away, he did whatever. I don't want that to be said of me. I need to look at Solomon, and I need to recognize that even though I may have the wisdom of God, I have the temptation of Satan. Even though everything seems like it's just really right in the grasp of my hand, that's not all of it. And see, we got this whole thing of getting to be with Jesus for eternity. That's more important, and that's a bigger, great option than any of the rest of this stuff. What's the saying? You can't, you don't haul the U-Haul to the to the graveyard or whatever like that. You don't see that kind of stuff. You can't take it when you're gone. I know in the Egyptian tombs they buried them with all the cool stuff they're going to take with them. And I've seen people that get buried with their jewelry or with their favorite thing, or that was it. Oscar, we'll bury you with your hat. I don't know. He's like, yep, because that's my hat. And a pair of speakers in there, so you just have them, you're good to go. And it's gone. Yeah, there you go. But you don't take none of it with you. When you're done with this ragged old tent, you're done with it. You'll set it to the side. It'll burn up. You'll be fine. You just go and serve God. I think in the interim, the time that before we get there, I think that's the part that concerns me. And I think that's the part where we just want to say, look, I want to just try to serve God. And when temptations come, and they're going to come, you see most pastors leave the pulpit. Well, I say that. The ones that you hear about leaving the pulpit leave in disgrace. There was that guy from Dallas that recently had to do the perp walk. It's like, man, temptations come throwing your way, and it comes after Christians. If you're serving Jesus, Satan don't like you. And if Satan don't like you, guarantee you're going to have a target painted on you. And I guarantee he's going to do stuff to you. How's it going to work? I don't know. It just does. We'll serve God and hope that, all things work well anyway. All things will work well, but we hope that our life goes in a way that we can work with it. But anything that happens, God's in control. Just remember that, live with that, and everything will be perfectly fine.